Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Colby Wyatt. Dr. Wyatt is a pediatric pulmonologist at Maine Medical Center in Portland. In his role, he works primarily with children of all ages in the area of issues of the lungs and respiratory system. In this capacity, Dr. Wyatt is regarded as a leading expert in the effects of vaping, especially in teenagers. After receiving a PhD in biochemistry in 2004 and his MD in 2008 from Dartmouth Medical School, Dr. Wyatt has had an impressive career which has included over 8 publications, 6 abstracts presented, and 12 awards won, including recognition from Tufts Medical School in 2014 and being named the Pediatric Specialist of the Year in 2015 and 2016 from Maine Medical Center. He was recently featured in a report on WCSH-TV on the topic of this alarming phenomenon of vaping by middle and high school aged students. The reason that Mr. Hopkins has allowed me to do this introduction today is because I know Dr. Wyatt as Colby, my high school friend and football teammate. That's right, this accomplished doctor is a proud MCI alum from the class of '92 and grew up right down the road in Burnham, Maine. My senior year, he started at center on our football team. My senior year, he started at center, and for those who don't know, that is one of the positions that's usually the biggest, meanest, older people on the team play because it's such an important position. As a sophomore, weighing all of 125 pounds, full of fight, will, and determination, and he did it with a big smile on his face. Right, Coach Miller? There are more stories that I could tell to help you understand that this outstanding doctor that we are so fortunate to have come and speak today came from a similar background and had a similar experience growing up as many of us who have grown up here and gone to this wonderful school. Down to earth, friendly, fun-loving, inclusive, and humble are all words that I think of when I recall him during those years. And though we've lost touch other than through social media and some mutual friends, my guess is that those characteristics have not changed much at all. And having lunch with him and doing a campus tour, I was right. Colby went on to earn his BA in biology from Colby College. Hey, just cut that out of me. In 1996, before embarking on his path to become such a specialized doctor. Knowing him as I did when we were teenagers ourselves, I'm not surprised that he followed his dream and not only made it happen, but has become one of the best at what he does. It's been a while since he's been back to campus, and I know he is excited about the opportunity to return and talk with us today. I'm sure happy he's here. Let's give a warm MCI welcome to Dr. Colby Wyatt.
We good? I wanted to start with a little rock and roll, so I got the feedback arranged for you guys. Of course, rock and roll dates me up. So thanks for having me. When I was in high school, if Tom told the room to settle down, Mr. Bertrand told the room to settle down, there's no way it would have happened. So just laughed at him. So I'm going to talk to you today about vaping, and if this gets preachy at any point, just wave your hands above your head, because that's not my intention. You're all young adults heading towards adulthood, and I have 2 kids who are in high school as well, and I know they don't like it when I talk to them. Period, but especially if I talk to them about health stuff. So if at any point you have any questions, I think it'd probably be safest to save them for the end, but if there's something you're just screaming you need to ask, just put your hand up and I'll break my pace, okay? I do move around and I'll look around the room. So just to warn you, don't get nervous. I'm not staring directly at you. I'm just trying to catch my thoughts here. So I'm giving my talk in 3 parts. One is how did we get here? And those pictures are small from the back, but there's MCI on the upper left. That's Colby College next to it, right? That's Dartmouth College below, and that's Cincinnati Children's where I did my training. These are all places that had a huge impact on me. The second part is why is nicotine bad for your body, and that's what that little rotating molecule is, that's nicotine. If I get close to the edge, just tap me, okay? And then the third is why is vaping bad for your body? And again, this is just information for you guys to sort of make up your own minds of what you want to do with your life. So the first part, how do we get here? So the number of U.S. students who are current daily cigarette users numbers 3.6 million. That's 1 in 25 high school seniors. The majority of them are white. They're from rural places in the United States, and they're of lower socioeconomic status. So these aren't suburbs. These are kids from middle America or the corners of America. Those 3.6 million users are important because many of them go on to use cigarettes as adults. This is where smoking gets entrained in them. You all have heard this 100 times. I could go through each of these statistics, but one or two of you are already falling asleep, so we won't last too long there. But what I want to talk about is why 3.6 million teen cigarette users is a success story, and how do we get here? It used to be a lot more. So we're down to 6% of U.S. seniors smoking cigarettes. To understand how we got there, you have to understand where smoking came from. So back in the 1900s, smoking wasn't that big a deal. You had to roll your own cigarettes. The cigarette machine wasn't invented. There wasn't that much marketing. It was written communication. And then something happened. That line I'll talk about in a second. That something that happened was World War I. So in World War I, we sent a large portion of our young male population overseas to fight. And to help with morale, we sent cigarettes with them in their C rations. We don't fully understand at this point what cigarettes are. I mean, we know people smoke them and they get some enjoyment out of them, but we just did it to boost morale. After they came back, smoking started taking off because all the young men were doing it and passing around to their other friends. People saw people doing it, so smoking started climbing. And then there's another peak in smoking, and that's World War II. So again, the majority, a large number of young men were sent overseas to a place where they were seeing pretty horrible things, and they sent cigarettes along to help them. The number of cigarette users jumped dramatically. Then you'll see another peak, and that third peak is the Korean War, the Forgotten War. And that was between 1951 and 1954. We had this other little peak. You notice there's a dip there in smoking after the Korean War. You'll talk about that in a second, where that came from, but just keep that in mind. The third sort of plateau there is the Vietnam War. Now, when I was reading about this and thinking about this, I was trying to figure out why we didn't have even more smokers with the Vietnam War, why it plateaued. Well, at that point in time, if you look at that number, that's almost 4,500 cigarettes per adult in the United States. So every single adult was smoking 12 to 15 cigarettes a day. That's not true. Some were smoking like 40 cigarettes a day or 60 cigarettes a day. But that's how it worked out. The next, so I told you I was going to talk about this peak. So in 1950 was the first report that linked smoking to cancer. People started understanding the risks of smoking. 1964, the U.S. Surgeon General issues a warning on smoking. And shortly after that, health warnings were added to cigarettes. Those health warnings said cigarettes may be harmful to your health. So we see this plateauing and maybe a little bit of a dip. But it wasn't until 1975 that smoking in the U.S. took a really big dip. And that's when the U.S. military said we're not going to put it in rations anymore. This was fought by the tobacco industry. They really wanted smoking. They really wanted cigarettes for the troops. This was all done. I don't want to make it sound like there was this evil cabal of cigarettes manufacturers, although as a pulmonologist you like to think of them that way. This was done for troop morale initially, but it turns out when they went back and looked at some of the cigarette industry documents, they did start understanding pretty early on that these were addictive. And they weren't shy about knowing that getting younger people addicted to them is how they build their business. I'll show you some data on that later, so you know it's not just me blustering up here. So the effects, why I spent all this time in the military, is that's how the U.S. became addicted to cigarettes. And after the military stopped providing cigarettes to their soldiers, we had a couple other wars, and you'll see there's no bump in cigarette usage. In fact, not only weren't they supplying cigarettes to their soldiers, they weren't allowing them to use them. So this trend continued, and those are some additional wars there that kind of keep going on. You know, the graph finishes in 2008. Come on. Sorry, it's getting hung up here. All right. So back to this graph. So we know how the adults are smoking, but how did the kids get to where they were? This graph starts in 1975, the peak smoking that you saw in that other graph, before they took it away from the military. And that blue line there is the 12th grade for those of you that can't read it. So this is people before they're in the military, but they're old enough to, some of them are old enough to go. I'm just gonna use the computer because I think this is slow in here. So there started to be a decline once they weren't as popular in the community anymore. A couple of things were responsible for that. In 1971, television ads were banned. You used to be able to see cigarette ads on TV. Without the presence of cigarette ads on television, fewer people were using them because fewer people got hooked on them by watching people do it. But the real reason they probably changed is cigarette prices started to increase. So with the loss of the market share, the companies had to charge more for their product. I apologize for the technical difficulties here. I think my slide might have just crashed. The next thing on the slide comes up, there it is the increase in tobacco prices or cigarette prices. So the gray area is what the tobacco companies were charging for cigarettes. As the price went up, the teen use went way down. And that's been known in the US for a while, and a lot of the taxes that are on tobacco products are to prevent teen usage, because it's harder to come by money when you're a teenager and don't have a steady job. I'm just going to start clicking through these because it looks like it's taking a while to click through them. So the cigarette company started panicking. And they were trying to figure out what to do, right? So what do? We've got this great product that people get addicted to. Young people aren't using it anymore. So what do we do about it? Well, they went back in into their meetings, and we know they were doing this because there was a lawsuit that got some internal documents from the tobacco companies. And these are direct quotes that I think are worth reading or hearing them read. So the vice president of marketing said the young adult market represents tomorrow's cigarette users. And he's talking about 14 to 24-year-olds. So there's no question they were targeting kids in high school, right? 14 is a freshman, right? Unless you had a tough time in middle school, like somebody who went to school with, we'll remain nameless, but he did play quarterback a year. So it matters. They'll account for a key share of the total cigarette volume for the next 25 years. So they're looking at hooking 14-year-olds on cigarettes to keep their adult market going. There's a memo by the research department that recognized that all adult smokers, virtually all of them, start smoking by age 25. And that most smokers begin smoking regularly and select a brand before 18. So they wanted to not only get people hooked, but they wanted to get them hooked on a brand. This is important later when we start talking about vaping, because they're not talking about cigarettes here, they're talking about nicotine, right? And they know it's nicotine at this point. So what do? They bring out the Camel. So this is Joe Camel. How many here, and you just put your hands up quickly, have seen an ad with Joe Camel? Yeah, so there's like 18 people that are below the age of 40 that raised their hand. Not many, but all the adults have, right? And that's because he was everywhere. He was everywhere. I'm big into motorcycles, and I was big into motorcycle racing, and I couldn't get away from them. There was Smoking Joe's team. They released all these ads of all these cool things that we all wanted. This is before the internet, so you got to understand, like, we sat down with magazines and flipped through them. Seems old, because it is, I guess, but we weren't clicking through web pages. So this is what we had for advertising. This is print advertising with this cool camel. Seems kind of dorky now, but it was kind of cool. It probably still was dorky then, because I was kind of a dork at times when I was in but it worked. So what you're seeing here is teen smoking use. Joe Camel started. The reason this is at this point on the graph is this is where the ad campaign started. And you can see it plateaued, there was no longer a plummet. Then all of a sudden it started climbing. And they were getting kids hooked on tobacco again. And this is a real disturbing trend. So these other three lines that I haven't mentioned, and I don't know if you can make out from the back, that's 10th graders, and that's 8th graders, right? So they're getting middle school kids hooked on tobacco. And how do we know it was Joe Camel? Well, in 1991, two studies published in the Journal of the American Medical Association demonstrated that more 6-year-olds know Joe Camel than Mickey Mouse, which seems a little surprising, but so cigarettes were more pervasive than songs, I guess. I don't know. Back then it was just animated cartoons and all that. In 1992 was the first time there was age restriction. So anybody could buy cigarettes before. The first federal age restriction is when I graduated from high school. Tom and I were reminiscing about some of the days before here, but there was quite a bit of cigarette use when we were younger. In 1994 is that lawsuit that we talked about. So a bunch of states got together and started suing the tobacco companies over their advertising to children. And in 1997, under pressure from this lawsuit and the documents that were uncovered that they were actually targeting children specifically in their own language, Joe Camel was pulled. And teen smoking dropped dramatically. It wasn't just Joe Camel though. This is what you're not going to be able to read from the back, and I apologize for that. There was a state tobacco settlement, and I don't know how many of you are aware of that, but every state in the country, almost, I don't think Kentucky signed on to it because that's the big tobacco state, got a giant settlement from tobacco companies that funds anti-smoking campaigns. This tobacco settlement also severely limited all kinds of tobacco advertising. So as the advertising went down, so did teen smoking. So what's a tobacco company to do? Again, trying to figure it out. Well, they want to invent something, right? So my career before medicine was in research, and this is how most of us like to think of things when we're trying to invent things in research. Some of us are a little more diabolical, and none of us look like Tony Clark. Most of us kind of look like this guy, right? Kind of all up in our own heads, and that's why we wear bow ties, because we don't realize they're totally ridiculous. And most of our inventions look kind of like that. But sometimes we invent good things. And I'm going to say something that may not be as popular. So how do we know they were doing that? If you look at the patent registers for the US government, there were dozens and dozens of US patents filed on vaping devices that started in the late 90s while the lawsuit was going on and went right through the 2000s. And then one guy beat the big tobacco companies to developing a commercially viable vape device. And that man was in China. He's a pharmacist. And it came from a place of caring, actually. He was looking for a nicotine delivery device because his father was dying of lung cancer. And he was a heavy smoker, and he knew his dad wasn't going to quit, so he wanted a device that would help. So this is where the thought that vaping is good for you comes from, because this is the thought, let me rephrase that. This is the thought where vaping is not harmful comes from. Because this guy initially invented the device to help his father, okay? I'm going to show you some information that hopefully you understand it's not true, but that was the culture of it at the time. So this kind of got vaping on a larger scale, and the market started growing. And in 2006 was the first import of a vape device into the United States. The FDA saw what was going on, was a little nervous, because you're not actually allowed to distribute medication delivery devices unless they've been approved by the FDA. So they put an import ban on them. They were immediately sued by the e-cigarette companies and the vape companies, saying, this isn't a medical delivery device. This is just a way for people to enjoy a product. The FDA said, no, you're making claims that people quit smoking, that's a medical delivery device, and just like a patch or gum, you need to be approved. Well, a federal judge in 2010 sided with the e-cigarette companies and said, no, they're right. They can bring this in, you don't have the authority to do it, to regulate it. And in 2010, the US Court of Appeals upheld that ruling. Now, a lot's happened since then. It's another 45-minute talk to talk about the law behind this. And the FDA is actually starting to regulate things, and states are starting to regulate vaping, but this is why, I'm just trying to lay the groundwork for why it took off so recently, in the last couple of years. So what happens after 2010? Well, they go back to the advertising, right? Because that's what helped them with tobacco. So in 2000, what you're seeing here is dollars spent on e-cigarette advertising, and then the 30-day cigarette use among e-cigarette use among youth, or vaping among youth. So the survey was, have you used a vape device or e-cigarette in the last 30 days? And that was the question. And you can see 2010, the courts ruled for the e-cigarette companies, they start bringing them in, start marketing them, because they know they're safe. They're not going to spend this money on marketing and have the device taken away. And teen use goes up. And so does marketing dollars. So this one's incredibly hard to reach in the back. So this is $400 million spent marketing, and that's 2017, right? In 2011, after the legal cases were partially settled, they were roughly at $10 million in marketing. It's a huge growth, and it's paying off for them. Altria, I just highlighted that because Altria is a company I'll mention later. You can see they have a pretty small market share here. The red is Juul, the one that most of you are familiar with. You may be familiar with all of them, but the red is Juul, which came on a little late in the game. I'll talk a little more about that. So they start advertising again. And they're using the old advertising campaigns, right? These sort of print-style ads, probably showing up on a web page, large format ads. So this is an old cigarette ad from '74. Cigarettes are safe and natural. This one magically doesn't get wet while you go swimming, and you can still smoke. And this is green smoke, so kind of green connoting that it's environmentally friendly. Here's Joe Camel, and here's a similar ad for a vape pen. And then Juul. This is Virginia Slims, and this is an ad for Juul, kind of following the same format. But Juul took it a step further. So Juul's a company out of San Francisco, and these are all tech people. And they use their knowledge in tech and how to make things work for technology and how to market technology. They really know what they're doing. And so they hired a guy from Apple to design their device. So it's not a coincidence that these are old to you, but these were really popular about 20 years ago. It's not a coincidence that these iPods look a lot like the Juul devices. These were a monster hit. The same guy that designed these designed Juul. Same exact guy, hired away from Apple. And then they needed a marketing genius, right? So the old marketing is old marketing. And these are, like I said, young people living in San Francisco, in the tech world, movers and shakers, and they know that the old marketing is old. So this is the old marketing guy, right? Kind of looks like me, right? Trying to figure out what young people want. And that's not who they need to market this new product. They're marketing to a young generation. So they use young people. And they start marketing through social media, which is something that I use poorly. Most of us do as adults. We're all on Facebook, right? That's why none of you are. But they know that. So they go on Twitter, and they go on Instagram, and there are 106,000 YouTube videos linked to Juul, with over 500,000 hits. There are the number of tweets that were released. Another thing that's hard. So this is 2017. These are the number of tweets about vaping that were released, and these are linked to Juul. In 2017, it goes through the roof. And I'll read you the numbers on the side there. That's in the millions. And it's, I can't even read it. I need younger eyes. They were releasing about 500,000 to 1 million tweets in 2017. When they market where the tweets are, it's where the teen smoking was the lowest. So they specifically targeted areas where nicotine did not have a strong foothold to target to get the word out on Juul. So if you wanted to market a product to people to get them off cigarettes, you wouldn't do it in places where people aren't smoking cigarettes, right? It doesn't make any sense. So here's rise of the Juul. So this is market share for products. And the reason I'm not picking on Juul as a company, I'm just trying to put it out there so you guys understand where all this is coming from. So in 2015, it's non-existent. Well, it's there. It's just really small. 2016, here come the tweets. In 2018, it's giant. The reason that's important for all of you, when you're thinking about what you want to do, is here's high school use, okay? So all these other products are out there, and the teen use is 16%. This year was skipped but 11%. And then when Juul takes over, teen use is at 28%. And that's because it's the most popular product out there for consuming nicotine. This is Jules Valuation as a company compared to other giant US companies. That's Ford Motor Company. Juul's more highly valued than that. This is billions of dollars. So it's a $40 billion company that grew over the past 4 years, marketing an addictive chemical that's also harmful, and I'll get to that in a second. This was not a happenstance. This was a very sharply orchestrated product launch with great design, great marketing, marketing that we don't realize we're being marketed to. This was a huge success story for industry in the US. Unfortunately, they market something that hurts people, but it's a huge success story for industry. This is how you want to sell things. If you can make it addictive, you sell more of it. So where are we now with vaping? I don't know that anyone really knows. This is the smoking curve you've seen a couple times. I think we're around here. I think it's still going up. And the reason I think that is if you graph those percentages on this curve of the vaping, this is the 16% in 2010, there's the 10% in 2017, and there's a 20% in 2018. Numbers aren't in for 2019 yet. 2 years ago, when the principals of Maine were asked how many kids in their school they felt were vaping, I think the number was around 48%, and now it's in excess of 90%. But you all know the numbers better than any of the principals and teachers know, right? Because the thing about Juul is this could be a Juul pen and you wouldn't even know it, right? It looks just like this. All right, so why do we care? Why do we care at all? Like, why is there somebody standing up here talking about vaping? It's because it's going to hurt you. And my job and my passion in life is pediatric health. I want people to live the best life they can. Any health problems you develop in childhood have been demonstrated to decrease your income over your lifetime, which is whatever, income's not everything, but it can decrease your quality of life too. It can pigeonhole you as well. So can you guys in the back read that? Can you raise your hand if you can't read that? Well, that's a huge number of people. All right, so I'll go through this. So why is nicotine addictive? It's because it feeds the dopamine system in your brain. Dopamine is the reward system in your brain. And why is it worse for teens? It's because your brains aren't fully developed yet. My kids roll their eyes every time I say that, but it's totally true. It's also what makes teenagers so wonderful, because your brains aren't fully developed yet. So your brains are more plastic than mine. My brain's pretty much set in its way. I can do things to keep it fresh. I can pick up new skills every year. That's what I try to do every year. If you want to hear somebody play really bad blues guitar, I've been playing for about 6 weeks. And it's really bad. But I enjoy it, and my wife doesn't, so it makes me happy. But because of the plasticity of your brain, all the neurotransmitter and the receptors aren't fully formed. When you smoke nicotine, what happens is you get more nicotine receptors. So to get the same charge, you have to smoke more, right? It also means that when you stop using nicotine, those things want a signal. Those receptors want a signal. And that's where the withdrawal stuff comes from. That and the dopamine, right? So you get more of a charge, but there's more of a down. This shows up as anxiety when you don't have it, and there are a lot of places, a lot of schools around the country that are seeing these epidemics of anxiety from nicotine withdrawal, largely because of vaping. There are some benefits to nicotine. I didn't mean it to be hard to read, the green. So I'm not trying to downplay the benefits. So the benefit of nicotine, and I'm not saying this as an advertisement for nicotine, okay? So the benefit of nicotine is it can increase your alertness. So a lot of people who drive truck overnight use nicotine to help them stay awake. Some feel it increases your concentration. There's been a couple studies to show that your concentration might be a little better. But, and this is a huge but, it comes with consequences, right? Because if you're using nicotine for concentration, you're going to need more of it. And you're going to need more of it. and you're gonna need more of it. And then before you know it, you're addicted, right? Because it doesn't take much. I have a partner whose daughter is at Dartmouth right now. And one of my partners at work, her daughter's at Dartmouth right now. And when they walk around the library at Dartmouth, there are kids vaping at Dartmouth in the library, and they're walking around looking for pods. Because they're like rats in a cage, in a way. They're just looking for more and more to drive their concentration. And when they're without it, they panic because of the anxiety portion. So the best way to get around that is never start. And you'll be fine. You concentrate well. Everybody has trouble concentrating. Everybody in every stage has trouble concentrating. That's part of being human. So anyway, side effects of nicotine. No one waved their hat. That was a little preachy. I was hoping you waved your hat. That was a little preachy. So the side effects of nicotine and why it's important, especially if you're an athlete. So most people in the U.S. who smoke die of heart disease. Heart disease is loosely related to smoking, but mostly related to nicotine. So with nicotine, you get an increase in coronary artery disease, that's heart attack. You get increased blood pressure. It can cause asthma attacks. Nicotine alone, not just tobacco and smoking. And it can affect your muscles. So your muscles won't respond the same way because they're starved of blood. So that's one way that it can affect your athletic performance, for those of you hoping to do something with it. So the last part is like, why is vaping bad for you? So I've had several patients be like, I vape, you know, it's part of my new conversation with the kids. They say they vape, but they think there's no nicotine in it, so it's safe. Well, vaping, actually, you don't know what it does. The short answer is no one has any idea what vaping does to you. I can tell you that your lungs are a giant filter for the environment, and there are these organs in your body that are immune privileged, which means that you can be exposed to something and you're not going to get sick. So your skin, right? Unless you have eczema or hives or something like that, you can put all kinds of stuff on your skin and you're fine. Your GI tract, unless you're allergic to food or have celiac disease, you can eat all kinds of junk and you'll be fine, right? Your lungs aren't the same way. They're actually immunosurveillance. It's how some of your immune processes are built. So anything that gets in your lung, your body responds to. Anything you inhale, your body responds to. So that alone makes vaping unsafe. But we have some more data. So the contents of vape, there's flavoring, nicotine, glycerin, propylene glycol. These are all compounds that have known risk factors. Okay. This is just not important, actually. These are all, the propylene glycol is in everything. It's in shampoo, it's in soaps. It's deemed as a, sorry, I'm just trying to videotape this, I keep walking out of the frame. It's deemed as a safe product by the FDA, but not for inhaling. It's safe for consumption by mouth. And that's because your gut's immune privileged, like I mentioned earlier. Vegetable glycerin is the same. And the flavorings, there's been, and I'll talk about the risk of those in a second. The flavorings are important to understand the risk of those. There's actually been documented cases of illnesses, and it's on flavorings. The flavorings that are in vape are regulated by the Occupational Health and Safety Administration because of an outbreak of bronchiolitis obliterans, which is just a big word that means a lot of scarring in your lungs. It's called popcorn lung. So if you've ever heard online or read these pages about popcorn lung, it's bronchiolitis obliterans. The reason it's called popcorn lung is in Ohio, there's a Jiffy Pop factory that was making buttered popcorn, microwave popcorn. And some of the employees were exposed to too much of the fumes from it, just flavoring fumes. And those flavoring fumes caused them to have this overwhelming response. The same thing happened in a coffee factory for flavored coffee. Those same flavorings, the same compounds are used in vape pens that don't have nicotine. It's not that it's not the popcorn flavored vape pen, if there even is such a thing. It's just the flavoring compounds in general. That's what happens if you keep them up and inhale them. Now, obviously, it doesn't happen to everybody because we don't have kids walking around with bronchiolitis obliterans, but we have seen 2 cases of this in Portland. And nicotine. So we already talked about sort of how nicotine is bad for you. And many of you probably understand the nicotine content of these devices. But a typical cigarette contains about 10 milligrams of nicotine, and you absorb about 1 to 2 milligrams. Nicotine in a Juul pod is about 40 milligrams. And you're inhaling and absorbing a lot more of that. So if you do the math, it's a pack of cigarettes, pack and a half of cigarettes in a dual pipe. That's assuming that what they're saying is correct, because there's nobody regulating them right now. They can put whatever they want in there. And there was actually a study, and this really doesn't show up, but this is a study done in the Journal of Addiction Medicine where they took a bunch of vape devices and vape pens and e-liquids that you put in the refillable ones, and they measured how much nicotine were in them. So 5 of the most popular flavors, 2 concentrations were tested, 0 and 18 milligrams. And what they found in the 0 milligrams, so no nicotine is supposed to be in this product at all, they found between 0.01 and 24 milligrams per mil of nicotine. So that is half of the advertised dose that's in a Juul, and there's not supposed to be anything in there, right? Was it an accident? Maybe. These are commercially available. They just went out on the shelf and bought them. So they're out there. Is it that they know nicotine's addictive? Maybe, right? If I was trying to sell a product and I can make it more desirable, I probably would. Happily, I don't have to do that. I'm just in charge of trying to make people healthier. But they tested the 18 milligram devices, and they found 37%. So about 40% of the time they had what was in there, but sometimes they had a lot more in it, up to 27 milligrams. So it kind of sounds like it's coming from the same batch, right? The numbers are kind of similar. But just know that it's not regulated, and you don't know what you're getting. So why should you care? And I'm actually wrapping this up. We don't know the long-term effects of vaping. Nobody does. There are a lot of websites out there that advocate vaping for quitting smoking. Is it better than smoking? Maybe, yeah. We don't know yet. It's going to take about 25 years to understand that. Because we don't know what the exposure to these carcinogens that are in the vape, even though they're much lower than a cigarette, we don't know if that's a safe level. We will know, and unfortunately it's on this generation's backs, right? And so this is a big experiment that's being done on us as a population, and we'll find out. We do know that the content of vapor that causes cancer, right? So this is what happens when you heat up the propylene glycol and all of that. You get formaldehyde, acetaldehyde, cadmium, isoprene, lead, nickel, nicotine we talked about. This is a big long thing that just means I'll give you cancer if you take enough of it, and toluene. These are all compounds you don't want to breathe in, and they're in vapor. We know that vapor can cause asthma exacerbations. I've met probably 4 dozen kids that have had asthma exacerbations just because they vape. And there are papers at the national meetings all the time about vaping and the risks of vaping. We know vapor causes lung inflammation. They actually did a cool study where they put a camera in somebody's lungs, and before they vaped, they had the camera there and they took pictures of it. And then they had the guy vape. This was an adult, not a child or a teenager. And they had the guy vape. And then they were looking in the lungs the whole time. After they vaped, there was so much mucosal irritation, it looked exactly like somebody who smoked a combustible cigarette. Your lungs are not designed to take foreign matter in, and its response is inflammation, and inflammation can cause long-term effects. And then what about nicotine? We already talked about the neurologic behavioral problems with nicotine and the cardiovascular problems with nicotine. So what's the future? I don't know. I don't know what your future is. Hopefully it's great. You all have a unique experience. My experience involved MCI and a lot of the people in the room today, or relatives of the people in the room today. And I just hope you keep an open mind as you go through life, experience things, take in information from all kinds of sources, understand there's merit in it. If you read something that's too good to be true, there's no free ride for anything. So if it's touted as a health benefit, make sure you read and understand whether it truly is. Don't allow yourself to be put in a category. So, sometimes things you do put you in a category, and don't let other people label you. You can pretty much, if you set your mind to it, do what you want to do. There are a lot of opportunities for all of you out there. And beware of behaviors that limit your life experiences. So addiction, and even if it's to something that people think is benign as nicotine, can really affect your behaviors and how you interact with the world. And I just would like you all to be aware of that and make smart choices. So I was always told when someone gives a talk, you only remember 3 things, right? So these are the 3 things. The health effects of vaping are not measured or known. We won't know that for a couple decades, right? But what is known is that vaping is not safe based on the contents of it. We don't know the long-term effects, but we know enough of the stuff, the components of vaping have hurt people in the past, and there's no reason to think they're not going to hurt people in the future. Nicotine is not safe in any form. It will affect your cardiovascular system. It will affect your neurologic system. It will affect your muscles. It's not a safe compound. And this message is just coming from a place of respect, and I hope you all kind of take it as that. It's just to provide you information, maybe give you something to think about when you guys are on your own, and hopefully you find it somewhat useful. I think I have another slide here. That was just so I can take any questions. You guys probably can't see this, but you know this person. I don't know if he's in the room. Mr. Peterson. There he is. There he is. So Mr. Peterson, his first year here, I was in his first class, I believe. Yeah. Nice to see you again. And that's Mr. Miller, right there. Hard to see, he's kind of in shadow. This is, I understand Mrs. Miller's not teaching here anymore, so you don't know her, but she was another part. And I put these folks up here because they're teachers, and they really care about you. All right, I can take any questions. I didn't expect to get emotional. But my wife did. She told me, don't you cry. She knew I was coming home, that's why.
Dr. Wyatt?
Yeah.
What do you tell your teenagers?
Thank you.
We're going to have a couple of questions. Couple of questions.
What do you tell your teenage patients who are already addicted to vaping?
That's a tough one. A lot of the information here, it's not a 35-minute talk. I do get a lot more time with them because I'm not in primary care, so I get a little more time with them. I try to just give them information. So I have the enviable part of not being a teacher and not having to be a disciplinarian and not having to shape behavior on a day-to-day basis. I'm a very different parent than I am a clinician. So I just give them information. I try to provide the information about the contents of vaping. I try to provide the information about nicotine and the effects of nicotine in the body. I try to let them know that, I know it's hard to believe when people are telling you things you don't want to hear, but everyone's cheering for you. They want you to succeed.
All right, so what I will offer to you is, as I was sitting there listening to Dr. Wyatt and Colby talk, is that what we who have gone to school here know so well about MCI is that we give you, and it's always been this way, all the information you need. And I don't think that you are going to get some of this information from some of your sources, right? So you make an informed decision, just like we talk about in all of your classes, that's best for you as part of what his message is, and I think it's a great message. The emotion you're seeing is getting back here and probably looking out and seeing himself sitting out there, and that's really special. So we're really grateful to have him back. A warm round of applause and thanks for Dr. Wyatt. And we have a couple of gifts for him. A dish of, why not give a doctor a candy dish with candy in it? So one of my favorite things. So
Thank you. Thank you
candy
very
dish
much.
from MCI. And then an MCI football tie, so he can always remember his roots. And standing next to the guy that was twice as big as him and half as good. So congratulations to Colby.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Feel free, as you leave, to walk up, say hello, ask him any questions, talk to him about anything. I think you found that he's pretty open. You've got a great audience and great afternoon.